My name is D. Sandeep. I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of Information Technology of MLR Institute of Technology, Hyderabad. So in previous class, we discussed what is the class and what is an object, how can we create an object, and any number of objects we can create in a class. So like that one we discussed, and how that object can access the variables and methods using object. So these are all the things we discussed in previous. Now we are going to discuss some more concept on object and then constructor, right? See here, self variable, constructor, and difference between the method and constructor. Now what is the self variable? See, we are passing every time, that is self variable, as a first parameter in this constructor or in this method. This is the first parameter. Compulsory, you have to pass the self variable as a first parameter. Okay, see, self is the default variable. Self is the default variable, represents the instance of the class. That means, for example, here we have the program. Here the self represents the current class of the objects. The self represents what? The current class of the object. See, here we are not going to pass any value to the self variable. We are not passing any value to the self variable. Why? Because of the self variable represents what? The current class of the object. Whenever you create that, whenever you are calling that M1 function or you create that object, what will be happen, into the self variable, by default that object, what? That object value, that object unique identity value will be passed into the self variable. As a programmer, we no need to pass any value to the self variable. Then which value will be specified means the current class of the object unique identity value. That value will be passed to the self variable. So that's why it represents what? Current class of the object. Current class of the object. Next, by using the self variable, we can access the instance variables, and also we can initialize the instance variables, and also we can access the instance method of object. See, in this program, you see here, we by using the self variable, we are declaring the instance variable, or we are initializing the instance variable, as well as by using that self variable, we can also access the instance methods. Instance methods. Next, self variable must and should be first parameter inside the constructor. If it is not the first parameter, then we will get some error. Similarly, self variable should be first parameter inside instance method. Here also compulsory you have to pass the first argument, that is the first argument as a self variable. Next, it is used to initialize the instance members of the class. Instance members means that is an instance variable, or that is an instance method, and also we can say constructors. Okay. Next, it is used to maintain the uniqueness and identity of each instance of a class. Yes. For example, t equals to test. Here we created one object. For this, what will be happen? A unique identity value will be get, and t1 equals to test. For this also unique identity number. That means, so for it is used to maintain the uniqueness and identity of each instance of a class. Okay. So that means the self variable represents, okay, self variable represents, for example, under the class test. Yeah, here is the program. Here, see, under the class, what will be happen? See, this is the test class, right? Under the class, how many objects are there? T1 object, T2 object, and T3 object. for whenever this statement will be execute, then a unique identity value will be represented by using in the self variable. And whenever this object is executed and a different unique that means a different unique identity object address will be represented in the self variable. And for this object creation, a different number represent will be in the self variable, right? That means, so the self variable represents a unique and identity for each and every object of the same class. That means the self variable represents here one unique value of the one unique value to this object, and here for this object a unique value will be represent, and here a unique value will be represent. So like that one, here three objects even though under the same class, but the self variable represents three different unique identity numbers for these three different objects. So that is the importance of the self variable, one of the important statement. Next, it is also used to create programs, object oriented programs in Python. So this is about what? Self variable. Sir, what will be happen if we did not pass the parameter as a self? That is the first parameter ga, sorry, here the first, I did not pass the first parameter. That means I did not pass the self variable as a first parameter. Then we will get an error. Let me run this program. See what we will get. See, we will get an error. Which is that error? Type error. Under the type error, what is that one? Positional arguments error. Already we discussed about the positional arguments in the types of arguments, that is actual arguments, right? Anyway, so that's why the self variable must and should be first parameter in the constructor or in the instance method, right? Next, what is the constructor? Okay, what is the constructor? So constructor is a special method in Python. Yes, constructors is what? It is a special method in Python. And the constructor main role is initialize the objects. Yes, what is the main purpose of the constructor? For example, class test. Now t equals to test, and here I define the constructor double underscore and init and then self. So now when these, right, so what is this purpose of this constructor? Means the purpose of the constructor is used to initialize the object. The purpose of the constructor is used to initialize the object, initializing the object. Next, in Python, the name of the constructor must and should be double underscore init double underscore, and the parameter, the first parameter will be self. This is the rule. That means that is the compulsory. The name has to be compulsory like that one. Next, when this constructor will be executed, the constructor will be executed at the time of object creation. When? At the time of object creation. So constructor will be executed at the time of object creation. So no need as a programmer explicitly invoke or execute that object. So that is a constructor. Whenever an object is created, the constructor will be executed or constructor will be invoked automatically. That is the thing. Next, the main purpose of the constructor is declare and initialize the instance variables. Okay, we seen this when we are going to discuss about that instance variables. But the main purposes here is two things. One is initializing the object, and second one here is the purpose of that constructor. The purpose of the constructor is what here? Declaring and initializing the instance variables. That is the thing. Next, for one object, the constructor will be executed only once. See, for example, here I will create only one object. Okay, na? I will create only one object. Print hello. print hello. Now see how many times it is executed the constructor. For one object, one time that constructor will be executed. For example, now two objects are there. Okay, now see T1 equals to test. Now how many objects are there? Two objects are there. For the two objects, how many times the constructor will be executed? Two times will be executed. Okay, na? Two times will be executed. Like that one, for one object, the constructor will be executed only one time. Next, constructor take at least one argument, right? If you are not going to pass any parameter, that is at least self we have to pass. See, in this program, at least one parameter we have to pass to the constructor. That compulsory variable is what? Self variable. And that self variable is what? Has to be first parameter. Next, constructor is optional, right? Yes, constructor is optional. Why? That means if you are not define the constructor in the Python program, then the default constructor will be provided by the Python virtual machine. That means as a programmer, if you did not create any constructor, then the Python virtual machine will provide the default constructor. Anyway, we'll discuss about that types of constructors in the types of constructor. Now see, so this is the program, right? Here, this is the program. Already we discussed about that one. So how the constructors is defined, right? Now one more program I will execute now. See, simple program, class test, right? Now def double underscore init double underscore and self variable we have to pass as the first parameter, and now what? Constructor executing. Next here def m1, this is instance method, that's why we have to pass self variable as the first parameter. Now and then method executing. Now test, so T1 equals to test. Now T dot m1. So here two objects are created. For these two objects, how many times it will be executed? Two times will be executed, and only one time we call that m1 method by using T. That's why method executing, right? So this is about what? Constructor executions, right? Next here, this is about the example. Next, what is the differences between method and constructor, right? So what is the differences between the method and constructor? So the name of the method can be any name. See, def m1 name, or def m2, or def m3, like that one we can keep any name. But for the constructor, it should be always double underscore init double underscore. Okay. Next, method will be executed if we call the method. When this method will be executed? Whenever we call the method. Whenever we invoke that method, then only the method will be executed. But here the constructor will be executed automatically at the time of object creation. So no need that that constructor has to be invoked explicitly by the programmer, right? Next, for one object, the method can be called at any number of times. That means, for example, here one object is created. Now by using that object, we can call that m1 method at any number of times. There is no problem. But here per object, constructor will be executed only one time. Okay, na? For object, constructor will be executed only one time. Next, inside the methods, we are going to write the business logic, which is used to achieve the what? Task. inside the constructor we have to declare and initialize the instance variables, right? See, as I said before that one, right? See, we are going to use that instance, sorry, whatever that variables we define into the constructor, that variables is nothing but what? Instance variables. See, self dot a equals to 10. This is what? Instance variable. And this statement we are going to define only within the constructor and within the instance method. So inside the constructor we can declare that and initialize the instance variables. So this is about what? Differences between the method and constructor, right? So finally, the self parameter is a convention in Python object methods that refers to the instance of the object itself. That means the self variable represents the what? Current class or particular class of the object. Next, a constructor is a special method which is used to initialize the what? Initialize the variables of an object, that is, we can say instance variables. Next, objects are created by calling the constructor of a class. That means objects are created. Whenever the objects are created, then the constructors will be invoked or the constructor will be called. So in Python, that constructor method is always should be _init and we have the pass the variable, that is self variable, and that self variable has to be first parameter, right? So this is about what? Constructors and objects and about the self variable, right? Next class we will discuss about the types of constructors, right? Thank you.